Good afternoon. It's Monday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You're on YouTube or Facebook Live, and you are in it to win it with Dialogue with Dozell. Hey, we got a great show for you tonight. What we need you to do is to tell somebody what's actually going on about this show tonight, and tell them what a great show that it is tonight. And get them to sign on to this show this night, okay? What we're looking at are all the crazy laws that have been passed in the state of Florida. I'm trying to share it, so give me one second. I thought I had done it. Okay, so I'm in the process of sharing it now to my timeline, and that's what I need to do. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Dialogue with Dozell. It's Monday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And tonight I have one of the, she's been deemed one of the greatest bosses in all of the world. And I think I second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth that emotion. Well, it's a motion and it's not an emotion. I sixth that motion. Her name is Dr. LaVon Bracy, and you know her from several fronts. She is uniquely qualified to talk about anything that pertains to injustice or inequities, because of everything that she went through, and you've heard the shows, and we're sorry about the background noises, but we're having some work done. Dr. Bracy, how are you tonight?
I am wonderful, and thank you so much, Pastor Dozell, for having me this evening.
No, thank you, Doc, for consenting to be with us tonight. We are, but because of your leadership and faith in Florida and some of the things that we've been doing, you had us go over to Tallahassee about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, when some of the most critical laws were being passed, and to see just how the debt has been stacked against minorities and poor people in the state of Florida. And we're just going to kind of go through some of these tonight and ask for your expert commentary as we discuss some of these tonight. Would that work for you, Doc?
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, I think the first one, Madam Producer, is the one that deals with gun. And last week, Kim and I had a very hot audience as we talked about gun violence. And boy, before we can do another show, there's another instance of a mass killing on last night in a place called Dozell, Alabama, that apparently a lot of minority people were killed, and one star football player because of AKs or AR-15s, assault weapons that have no place in society, but that a certain group of politicians will not try to ban. So can you show that first graphic so that we can kind of just let our audience know? So this is what the new in the state of Florida, this is what they did when they proposed permitless carry. No permit required to own your gun, no gun safety training required, requires gun carriers to keep an ID, and restricts carrying in certain places. Okay, so last week, Doc, my brother was here, and you may know he's a retired Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, 26 years there. And he spoke what every police chief, everybody in the state of Florida, every law enforcement personnel has spoken. And that is that, and please ignore the background sounds. We're having some work done here just near the studio. So he spoke of how dangerous it is for people to own guns in this state, and how dangerous it is for law enforcement. And Doc, just comment on how dangerous it's going to be for Black people for this to happen in the state.
Thank you so much. I can't fathom how passing HB 543, the permitless carry, that someone is going to think that we will see a decrease in gun violence. We will see in the state of Florida an increase in gun violence. We are going to find that we are going to see not only an increase as it relates to policemen as it deals with African Americans, but we're going to see an increase on African Americans killing African Americans as a result of this. We're making it real easy for anybody to be able to get a gun. And as a result of that, we are going to see violence that we have never seen before. Now, if a black person has a permitless carry gun and goes into a white neighborhood, the white neighborhood will say that I was threatened. And so therefore I had to use my gun. However, if it is vice versa, uh, you will see a number of us being killed for no reason at all. And it's going to happen. It is going to happen in the state of Florida. There is no statistics anywhere around the country where this bill has passed and they have seen a decrease in murders and what's happening with guns. It does not happen. You are saying, come on, get guns. We're going to make it real easy. And, may the best man win. And that's what it's coming to. When we think about the entire world, and nowhere, anywhere in the world has the problem that we face in the United States of America. With us being the richest country in the world, having more resources than any place in the world, why is it that we have not solved this gun problem?
So Doc, what is the ramification, or how does and this is what I was hearing from advocates that was advocating against this bill when we were up on Capitol Hill. They were saying, "Man, you have just opened the door for staying your ground to cause
Absolutely.
black people." So this is going to create an atmosphere with more and more Zimmermans.
More and more Zimmermans, yes. In terms of you came in my neighborhood, and the fact now I have a gun because and I don't have to have a permit to have it, but because I am black with a gun in a different neighborhood, that person was threatened by me, so I'm going to stand my ground, and I had a right to shoot.
So
And we have district attorneys that don't know how they are going to even navigate this in terms of the crimes that will come as a result of it, and how they're going to even charge persons based on this law that has just been passed.
Doc, what's the political? And I guess I know, but I just want you to spell it out in your only like you can do it. What is the political ramification of the Republicans doing this, or more specific, Governor Despicable? What is
Well, the ARA gives large sums of money to the Republican Party. It gives it to every person that runs in a position, and they get a lot of money. And as a result of that, you don't have one of them who will really stand against the ARA because, number one, they're afraid of losing their power. So I voted against the ARA, and so the ARA is going to decide that they're going to find a candidate that will run against me, and I will lose my position. So rather than do that, the power means more to me than protecting human beings. The power that I have as a result of this position is paramount, so that if 15 or 20 or 200 or 300 people lose their lives as a result of this, I still have my position in the state of Florida, and that's power to me. And so, because of that, not being the people that are important, but the power being important, and those with the largest money speaks, so that they will determine what happens in the state of Florida. So it is going to be chaotic. it is going to be tragic, and a lot of young people will lose their lives as a result of this permitless carry for the state of Florida.
So, Doc, this is one of my high school friends, Bernard Mason. He's a retired Air Force gentleman, Go Air Force. Um, he says, my brother told us about boxcars loaded with guns left in our hood. That is a continuation of that tactic. This is a continuation of that tactic. It's all about winning elections.
It is. It is all about keeping the power. And the landscape, man, I'm sure everyone knows, but I don't know if you have some people that may be watching that are outside of the state of Florida. What the landscape looks like, that there is a supermajority in the state house and in the Senate. In the House, there are 120 House of Representatives. 84 of them are Republicans. 35 of them are Democrats, and there's one vacancy. And in the Senate, there are 40 senators for the state of Florida. Each one of those senators, their territory is about a 500,000 people. Because if you look at the state of Florida, there's about 21 million, 22 million people that live in the state of Florida. So there are 40 senators. 28 of those senators are Republicans, 12 are Democrats. So they have what is considered a supermajority. And that means that anything that they want to pass, they don't need one Democratic vote because they have a supermajority. Those that require 75, 66%, they have it within their own party. The governor is Republican. All of the Senate, I mean, uh, all of his cabinets are Republicans. And the first time in 33 years in the state of Florida, all of the state Supreme Court judges are Republicans. So knowing all of that, and the governor won his race this time with almost a million votes. He won in 2018 with 33,000 votes. So now, when you look at 33,000 and a million, he has been emboldened that he can do whatever he wants because he has been given a mandate by the state of Florida for him to do exactly what he's doing. And these are not my words, but it's the governor words. He says, there's a new sheriff in town, and you have not seen anything yet. Quote, unquote,
So,
Ron DeSantis.
so Doc, yeah, we know Ron Despicable has put some quotes out there for the media to bite on, but Donald Trump seems to have his number. We're going to talk about voter suppression in a couple of segments, and I want you to be able to break those demographics down again for us. But we're going to transition over, but we want to send this message out loud and clear to our Black brothers and sisters. Don't get caught up in this craziness, this wild, wild west that this governor and this legislature has tried to perpetuate on us. You saw what Bernard said. This is part of this is just what this is what they wanted us to play into. We cannot allow a genocide of our people because by playing into their hands. Because sooner or later, in spite of what we just the quote we just made about him, I remember a legendary line out of an episode of Miami Vice where Sonny Crockett told Calderon, "Even fat cats fry Calderon." So we want you to know that. Doc, before we leave the segment, would you just please tell us a little bit about what's the tactic for open carry? They pull it at the 11th hour, and of course, I like to think that our protest on the steps of the Capitol had something to do with that. But tell us what the overall strategy of the Republicans are with open carry.
I don't think it's dead. I think it's dead for this session. I don't think that they will bring about the open carry, but I think it's political for the governor. The governor felt that if you're going to run for the president of the United States, you're talking 50 states, and you're talking red states, blue states, and purple states. And I think that they have done some preliminary work, and in doing the preliminary work, they found that that will not endear him to some of those purple states. So that's why you did not see the open carry on this time. Not to say that it's dead forever, but it's dead for this session.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. We're going to move on to we would like you to know that Doc, you have a doctorate, you have an EDD, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so for you all who not into all of the alphabets, that's a doctor of education. And so we're moving into this next segment that she's uniquely, as you can see, uniquely qualified to talk about all of this. But we're going to talk about the books that were banned, Madam Producer. If you throw that slide up, the books that this governor has banned, and this legislature has banned, and it started here with Ron Despicable, and it went on through all of the other a lot of other states. Now he's on a race with the clown from Texas, Governor Abbott, to see who can do the most ridiculous, despicable acts against minorities and poor people. And Doc, we just want to talk about a book on Roberto Clemente, a humanitarian who died helping an earthquake. I think it was Honduras,
Right.
land, and his book a book on his life gets banned because he's a person of color.
Listen, I think that this is just horrible. The state of Florida needs to really look at the history that has happened just within this state. And you don't you don't solve a problem by acting as though the problem never exists. So the governor does not want us to talk about anything that what he considers that will make anybody feel uncomfortable. So that means Black history. That means things that are in certain books that might be written. We don't want it being taught in the state of Florida. For an example, my own story cannot be taught because my story will make somebody uncomfortable. The fact that I integrated a public school system, the fact that I was beaten, but the fact that I was spit on, the fact that I was called the N word every day, the fact that at my desk they put nasty roaches, dead roaches and snakes uh, at my seat, the fact that they put tax in my seat, that is a true story. But because someone feels uncomfortable, that story cannot be told. You cannot erase history. You really can't. But what they are trying to do is to erase history. The governor is showing that I am in charge. I am going to pick and choose what books are placed in the public schools, what people can read and cannot read. It doesn't make any sense. It shows how racist he is. It shows how those that are in the House and the Senate who voted for this are spineless. They will not speak up to him. And and we are in an atmosphere just like Hitler. Everybody is afraid to make the new sheriff upset. So as a result of that, they vote on bills that they know are wrong, but they're afraid that they'll lose their power if they really voted the way that they should be. I contend that all of those who are voting against that bill don't really believe that, but they've been intimidated to the point that they are afraid to voice what the truth is. And they are afraid to represent the people that sent them to Tallahassee.
So, Doc, let me understand this. So, a book that chronicles your amazing story. You desegregated the Gainesville as Buchholz. What county is
Uh,
Gainesville?
Alachua County.
Alachua County. You desegregated the Alachua County public schools, and we're gonna play parts of that and have you talk about that on another show again, so people know just what you went through and how uniquely qualified you are to be a drum major for justice. Um, you mean to tell me we can't tell your story because it makes a segment of society feel bad, but yet we read their story of how they came in and massacred indigenous people, and it has been tied in by theologians and philosophers, and it's been called manifest destiny. I learned that while studying for the high school for social studies certification. That's called manifest destiny. That it was destined that people with white complexions can come in and run a nation out of their native land. And that's manifest destiny. But and yet you bring us over in slave ships. But it doesn't matter how we feel. You can tell that story, but it doesn't matter the impact it has on us. But when we talk about what we have gone through with your hands, that makes them feel bad. So we can talk about that.
Well, the Department of Education said that, they are banning books because they have no educational value. They decided they didn't want to have an AP course that talked about Black history, and the reason was it has no educational value. Now, how do I interpret the saying it has no educational value? It means that people that have a story that look like me, those stories are not important, and those stories should not be shared because the masses of people are not interested in what our stories are.
So Doc, the other thing that we're not talking about is I'm a retired public school teacher, and my my friends are telling me just how scared they are to teach almost anything, because anything could be interpreted as making somebody feel bad.
Let me tell you, because of what we are doing in Florida, these are the results of what DeSantis is doing, is that we are going to lose quality teachers that have decided I'm going to take an early retirement. I don't care anything about drop. I need to get out of here because this atmosphere is toxic. We are going to lose not only in our public schools in terms of high school and elementary, but it's going to happen at our colleges and universities. We are going to have major people who have made substantial contributions to education to leave Florida because they don't feel that they have the freedom to speak. And we are then, it's going to affect where we land in terms of how our schools are rated because of what is happening. And the saddest part of all of that is that we're going to have an ignorant bunch of kids unless we determine that we are going to teach our kids independently of what they are supposed to be taught in public schools. If we don't do it in our churches, and if we don't do it in our homes, and if we don't do it at every other places that we gather, our kids will grow up with the understanding, with the lack of understanding of their history. And the reason why history is so important, so you understand where you have gotten and how you got there. And the mistakes that have been made will never be made again because you understand it from a historical perspective. And that's what we are not doing.
My friend Bernard says our history has already been suppressed, omitted, and ignored to the max. This is only a continuation, nothing new.
Yeah.
Doc, I mean, it almost it almost, for instance, in me, I've not gotten around to it, but I want to do a book chronicling the amazing work of and sacrifice of Colin Kaepernick. He was the Kurt Flood of the prior generation, and in his prime, he gave up his career to stand up against injustice. How many other people? So, how many other young authors who are going to chronicle the truth are being suppressed? And then I'd like for you, before we go to break, to please elaborate on alternatives. You mentioned the church, community organizations. My daughter, the producer, her sister, they brought their two children together. All three of their siblings came together, and they had an African American history sleepover where they looked at a group of eyes on the prize and they read stories. But just tell us some other things that we could do, please.
Well, number one, I go back to the churches again. I think that in our churches, we need to talk Black History 52 Sundays, and every time there is anything that's going on, that we need to make sure that our kids and our folk know that they are the products of kings and queens. And if we don't tell them, they will never, ever know who they are and how important they are. And they need to know that we built this country, the shoulders of our ancestors. So the church is the number one place that I think that we need to start making sure that there is a curriculum and our kids are learning. Our parents need to take responsibility to understand our history, take those devices away from those kids, get some educational information for them in terms of our history, and make sure that they understand. And our parents need to go back and do what my dad did. I thought my dad was the hardest person in the world to deal with. But during the summer, I was required to read at least 8 books. And all 8 of the books were books that he had read. And I had to write a book report. And that's how I spent every summer. And I would say, oh, we got the worst dad in the world. But now I say, Dad, you knew that I had to know my history. I had to know where I had come from and how much I appreciate that. So parents, I know now we have the iPad and the iPhone and all these other devices, but we need to begin to put a book in front of our kids and demand that they read it. And then we have to discuss it with them so they will understand where they came from and how precious their ancestors are. And then we have other places such as the boys club and the girls club and various places such as the fraternities and sororities. They need to take a part in making sure that our history is taught and our kids understand who we are and where we have come from. We need to make sure that our HBCUs take a role in making sure that our history is being taught at our institutions and people know from whence we have come.
Joining the dialogue tonight, my dear friend, my boss, Dr. LaVon Bracy. She is she does the voter registration arm of Faith in Florida. She's a retired pastor. She has worn many hats. She'll be right back. We'll be right back with you after the break. Thank you. They got you. They got all of your virtual needs. Listen, they can make this boy look all right and presentable. They'll make you and hook you up, present all of your virtual needs, all of your web building, web designing, anything virtual, anything online. They'll do some things offline. Contact them, gogigaworld.com. They'll do it for you. Listen, this is usually the time that we either do a "Are you serious?" or "Dang dog," or we've come up with another one that this governor has instituted, and we got a lot we can say about him tonight. But since the whole show is dealing around him tonight, we're going to put all of that on pause. And tonight we're gonna take note of Autism Awareness Month, and we want you to join the dialogue and looking at this little short video tonight. We want to.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day I found out I had something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Okay, thank you all for weighing in with us, and anything you can do to help a person. I retired primarily from a school that had a large cluster of loving students who dealt with autism, and my heart will always go out to that. Anything you can do to help, please do so. Autism, that guide, you see it. Thank you, Madam Producer, is posted on the screen now. Please help and be that blessing to that segment of our brothers and sisters. Listen, we're continuing on. Dr. LaVon Bracy is our guest tonight on Dialogue with Dozell, and this she is really this is just what she's doing at this season in her life, and it is, Madam Producer, we want to talk about the voter suppression. This is what made me do this show the other day when we met. I flipped the script. We were going to deal with part 2 of gun violence, but God knows we could. But when hearing Dr. Bracy's presentation the other day, I said we gotta deal with all these crazy laws that are still being passed in Tallahassee. Talk a little bit about the voter suppression laws that are taking place in this state.
You know, I'm going to say that Florida leads the nation in terms of voter suppression. We had an election in 2022. These are not my words. These are words from the governor. The governor said that Florida should lead the nation in how effective our voting was. There was no substantial problems as it relates to voter fraud, and every county was smooth in terms of the election. Now, in essence, that's what the governor says. Well, what made all these laws come about that we're now seeing? Well, number 45 moves to the great state of Florida. After he loses the election, he began to say the election was stolen. The election was stolen. Every time you heard it, the election was stolen. Well, Florida then decides we need to make sure that Florida will never be on a list that they are saying that the election was stolen or something was happening in the state of Florida. So Florida last year go back to session, and they pass a bill called SB 90, and that bill began with the voter suppression. One major thing that came out of that bill is they came up with a police unit, what they're calling integrity unit as it relates to elections. That unit was put together to literally intimidate persons as it relates to voting, and particularly our returning citizens. As you know, in 2018, we passed Amendment 4, allowing 1.6 million returning citizens, uh, giving them their right to vote. Well, many people did not want to see that. So the legislature decided after people voted to allow them to have their rights restored and that they could vote. Then they just decided, well, let's tack on fines and fees, which means let's tell them, yes, you can vote, but all your fines and fees have to be paid. Well, imagine doing a crime 35 years ago in Broward County and then doing one in Pinellas County 25 years ago. During that time, we didn't have computers. So all those records were kept in a file cabinet. So therefore, when you call to see if your fines and fees are paid, nobody can tell you if they are or not. So you register assuming that your fines and fees have been paid and you don't owe anything. And then you have this what they call integrity police going around to see if there are persons who owe fines and fees, if there's a person who has voted and they should not have. So they went back to 2020 and found 20 people, and it went all over the United States viral that in the state of Florida, we were arresting people that had voted. So when 2022 came about and people wanted to know, oh, how did the governor win by so many votes? He did that because he intimidated people as it relates to voting. So many black and brown people didn't show up. So I thought that was the worst bill that could ever pass. So now they have the second intimidation bill and voter suppression called SB 7050. It just was dropped last week. Now, when session starts, there are about 2,000 bills that they will come up with. Many of them will not get on the floor, some of them will, and some of them will pass. Well, it starts at the beginning of session, which was in March. This bill just dropped last week. So everybody was kind of shocked about the bill. So now they are trying to, because there are only about 4 more weeks left in this session. It's over the first week in May. So now they are trying to make sure that they expedite this bill. And it has some horrible things in it. For an example, what they are proposing in this bill, that they will, what they call list maintenance. And what that means is every year they're dropping thousands of people off of the voter roll. Now, I wonder, do you know what the majority of those people, who they look like?
Yeah.
They are black and brown people that are being dropped, and people will go to the polls thinking that they can vote, and they don't realize that they are not even on the list again. Well, about 8 or 9 years ago, the state came up with everybody just can't do voter registration. You have to be a third party. So you have to go and register as a third party in order to do voter registration. They have large fines now for third party who are doing voter registration, because if you make any sort of mistake, you can pay up to $100,000 aggregate if you make mistakes in a registering voter. Simple mistake. A person has done a voter registration. I should turn this in Broward, and I mistakenly turned it in Dade County. Up until 2 years ago, if I made that mistake, Dade County would send it to Broward County, and nothing would be said about it. Uh, it's not mine. I'll send it to it. Now that's considered a mistake. If a person sent it to the wrong place, did not get it in time, that can be $50. If they feel that someone willfully did that, that could be $500. Then they can make it up to $5,000. If in fact you turned it in 5 days late. Each day you have to pay $50 fine for that one application. They're coming up with all sorts of stuff. They are in this bill. They're also having mandatory signature matches, which means when your vote comes in and your signature is on it, if you voted by mail, they will take that signature that you voted by mail and they will look on the computer based on your signature when you registered. Assuming that I registered 15 years ago, my signature is different now than it was 15 years ago. But a person determines that by just looking at it. And in some cases, that where there are really red states, some may look at that zip code and decide where that zip code is and make a decision that I'm not going to count this ballot because the signatures don't match. It is just horrible what they are doing. They are now giving this integrity police more they can do more now in terms of what their role is. They can review complaints. They can conduct preliminary investigations. They can knock on persons' homes going to investigate what's going on as it relates to voting. So it's another form of intimidation. So what they are trying to do, intimidate Black and brown voters so that we will not vote because we're saying the process has gotten too complicated. I just can't do this. Let them have it. And that's what they want to do because they know that they want to keep the power. So why all of this is being done? Because statistically, we know what's happening around the United States. Black and brown will be the predominant color of folk in the next 10 to 15 years, that we will have majority Black and brown in the United States. So what is being done now is we are trying to put laws in place that when we are not the majority, we still will hold the majority of power in the United States. We will be the minority, but we will still hold the power. And they are instituting horrible laws so that the power will stay with the majority who is about to become the minority.
So, Doc, you require we're called we're both male and female, but we're called fellows. We who do voter registration and work under the very capable leadership of Dr. Bracy of Faith, Florida. You all required us to go to Tallahassee and actually view the session and get a real sense firsthand of how suppressive these laws are. And one of the best things that could have happened to me was sitting in on some of those committee meetings and seeing I remember when I was a policeman, I was told that a civil service agent, you bring a group of Black people down here and that boys, you're going to show Black power, they're going to show you their power. And that's just what I saw in Tallahassee. Doc, what can we do? So I left there determined. Every other Thursday, we talk, and every other Thursday when we come together on our Zoom meeting, and you feed to us just what's happening. I leave more and more and more determined that I've got to get out and register voters. What can we do to overcome all of this oppression that they're trying to do to us?
We need to vote. I mean, that's what we really need to vote. Right now, there are roughly almost 22 million people in the state of Florida. 14 million of them are registered voters. 2 million are kids. There's approximately 5 million people who are eligible to vote and not registered. And what we need to do, each one of us, we need to expand our reach, expand our circle. We need to talk when we go to the barber shop, asking everybody, are you a registered voter? Because if you talk to 10 people and they talk to one person and they talk to another person, we are expanding our reach. I was telling a friend of mine, he was saying to me, yes, well, there's nothing we can do. I said, yes, there is. If your circle is just your immediate family and you don't talk to anybody else, we will never accomplish what we need to do. We need to expand it to people that we are unfamiliar with and we have never talked to before. But if we really want to make a difference, we cannot just stop at our churches. Uh, Reality is most people don't go to church. So if we're saying, oh, I've been to my church and I've talked to my church, well, what about all those people who never go inside of a church? Have you done anything to extend an invitation to them, to let them know exactly what's going on? When I ask persons, have you ever been to an apartment complex and just knocked on some doors? I mean, what I used to do, I'd go to an apartment complex, I'd meet the manager, and I'd ask her, can I have an ice cream social for people? And she said, oh, yes, come in and do an ice cream social. When you they'll put the notice out. You get 50, 60 people down there, and they'll eat all your ice cream up. And then you need to talk to them. Are you a registered voter? And why it is important that you need to register and you need to vote. And what we need to do when we talk to people, we have to let them know how what is happening impacts them and the future of their children so that they will know that they have to vote. And the power is in the vote. And we have just decided that we have relinquished our power and we're going to let those who want to stay in power be in power. And then it is so unfortunate because we can change the landscape and we can actually get the word out and get people excited about voting.
On the one hand, I went into a school the other week, and my old bones actually sat down in the gym class while some of the kids were standing on the sideline, and I had to be helped up by many people. I'm so heavy now, I had to be helped up. But I asked a group of kids, and several of them, whereas we met with good results as a whole, I was so discouraged, and you can't let it get discouraging because a lot of people just won't do it, and you have to say thank you for your time. If you change your mind, here's my card. But to see young people, I ran into 2 or 3, I can vividly see them right now. Say, man, why I'm gonna vote? I ain't gonna get paid. I said it's gonna determine how you get paid, what you can get paid for, and how much you can get paid. Sure, you do. And then to see some of the guys some of the brothers on the corners that'll tell you, man, this ain't gonna help my bag. It's discouraging. Yet on the other hand, there's a brother that's a part of one of our fellows who is a returned citizen, and that's kind of like his notch. He goes around to returning citizens, and to hear his report and his testimony, and even when I talk to returned citizens, for them to say, man, I can vote. You mean I can vote? Yeah, bro. If you don't have this or that against you, yes, you can vote. Well, let me spell it out. It's not a homicide or sex-related crime. Yes, you can vote. And to see the excitement on their face, that's what kind of balances out and kind of keeps us going. Doc, the clock is slapping us upside the head. We got about 9 minutes to kind of wrap this up. But I do want to talk about this for a brief minute, and then we got to talk about what he did at the 11th hour the other night. I want to talk about his assault on the trans and the gay community. Let's just call it out the whole gay community. And this is not a sociological, or it's not meant to be it's not to be a theological discussion, but we're just talking about basic rights for people. What is this governor's assault, and what can be done to turn it around on trans people in this state?
Well, I think what we have to look at is the fact that, number one, he's looking at a segment of that evangelical Christian group that he is trying to garner their support.
Christian group?
Wow. Yes. That evangelical group who believes in, let's not have any abortions, and God has made people a certain way, and anybody that's different. So he's trying to garner their support, and he's decided that this group I am going to target, because as I began to campaign for my next office, this is going to help us. It's inhumane, it's unchristian, and all of us should be treated with dignity and respect. I know you're a parent. I have 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren. I love them dearly. But regardless to what my kids or grandkids decide, my love is eternal to them. It's the same. And you just don't pick and choose, because kids are different. They think different. They have different assessments of who they are. You cannot just decide we don't want them in the state of Florida. I mean, who does that?
Ron Despicable.
Who does that? Who makes a decision that, if you don't do things the exact way that I do them, then we don't want you in the state of Florida? We are supposed to be, number one, Florida is considered a vacation capital of the world. It means that we want everybody to come here. Why is it that we have decided we want everybody to come here, be a part of this beautiful family, except those who are gay, those who are trans, those who are different in terms of what I believe in? It's unchristian. It's unethical.
I keep hearing you use those terms, unchristian, unethical. I don't think ethical would find its way. That word would find its way anywhere near our governor in much of Tallahassee. But unchristian is, the same Christian population that talks the Holy Bible that you and I preach from and talk about, endorses a candidate who openly talked about assaulting women.
Yes, absolutely.
That's that. It is the most hypocritical thing I've seen in most of my life.
It is. I mean, when you think about what that candidate says that he did to women just because he could, and unfortunately, a whole lot of women supported him in that. And then you are going to say that these trans who have done nothing to you whatsoever, that we don't want them, they're not appreciated, and there's nothing that they contribute in the state of Florida. It's crazy.
But we got about 2 minutes to briefly discuss this last thing that happened the other night, and you kind of talked to us about it. And I don't know how far you were able to go on a forum such as this, but I'll let you gauge it. Madam Producer, let's show this last slide. This was our very courageous governor at after the midnight hour with a few of his own. And let's look at that. Do we see anybody that looks like us?
None,
Uh,
none, none.
gosh, wow, where are we?
We're not there.
Wow. Well, this is when he signed this crazy anti-abortion. And again, this is not we're not bringing out theological, sociological, psychological, sociological things into play. We're just talking about basic human decency and care for people. He signs a bill that says that in 6 weeks, anything after 6 weeks, it violates this abortion act that he signed. And I'm told that some women don't even know that they're with child at the 6 week state.
Most women don't know at 6 weeks that they are pregnant or not. There are going to be a lot of women to die, and a large group of Black people will die. Number one, because we don't get the care that we need as it relates to health anyway. And when we are pregnant, the incidence of death are much greater with African Americans than Europeans, because the healthcare system does not work for us, particularly when we are on. We don't have the support, and we don't have the finances, and we don't have the insurances that others have. Now, this bill is horrible, and I think this bill is going to backfire on him. I really do. And the real purpose for this bill is, number one, they have been trying to deal with abortion for the last 50 years. But it's gotten to be critical now because most babies that are aborted are not by Black folk. We know that. Number one, we can't afford it. But because there is a decrease in white babies, they are really concerned about the fact that they're saying, first they said in 30 years that Black and brown will be predominant. Now they're saying in 20 years that Black and brown will be predominant. So what can they do in order to increase the number of white babies that are being born? You can come up with SB 300, 6 weeks abortion ban. So I think that this bill is going to get a whole lot of attention, not only from Black and brown people, but from those who don't look like us, because of the fact that now the state is going to regulate who should have a baby and who should not have one.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you just got to spend one awesome hour with our beloved Dr. Bracy. This is really not a 99 moment, but people like myself get to spend. We're with her for hours every other week, and we have direct calls every other week. And you've heard her story, and her book should be taught in every school. It should be taught in every school. So since Ron, I got to use Bernard's term. I'll put my Ron Despicable on the shelf and use his term, Ron Ridiculous. Since Ron Ridiculous has banned this, every church, every fraternity, every sorority, every civic organization needs to get Dr. Bracy's book. Doc, tell us the title of your book, please, ma'am.
A Brave Little Cookie. A brave little cookie. A brave little cookie. And it's on my website, bravelittlecookie.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, you really need to get that, and you need to hear that story. Again, I'm not rubbing it in, but we get to hear it all the time. We get to hear all the good things, all of her great life's experiences. Dr. Bracy, thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing with us and updating us. And I know we've been trying to get you and Pastor Rhonda on together. Y'all see the book right there, Brave Little Cookie, A Brave Little Cookie. We got to have that one, y'all. We've got to have that. So I'm gonna get it and share it with my church. I want everybody in my church to read that, and we're going to discuss that because we do believe in Black history 52 weeks out the year. And we demonstrated that on the dialogue this year. So we're gonna order copies of it, Doc, and we're gonna make sure. So we can't do it in the schools, but we can certainly do it in all of our private forums. Doc, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight here.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for having me.
Really, really do appreciate you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You are the gem amongst us.
All right. Thanks so much. Be blessed. Have a good week.
You as well. Thank you, ma'am. So, as I see it, thank you, Bernard. You helped make the show good, man. You and others like you with your comments, even those we'll go back and look at those over on YouTube. As I see it, Bernard said it best: vote, 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 and talk to others, and talk others to vote. That's the only way we're going to turn around that supermajority in Tallahassee, in Atlanta, in Nashville, and every other state that's passing these crazy, crazy laws. We wanted to throw them out there for you to see them because they don't talk about them on the news. They don't talk about them, but we want you to know them. Listen, tell everybody about this show tonight. We kept it purposely to an hour. If I stop talking, it's within that hour. Tell everybody about this tonight's show and let them be brought abreast. Dr. Bracy is innately on top of all of this stuff, and she has all of it. So please, please, please refer this show to someone to see just what's happening in Tallahassee and let it provoke you to vote and lead somebody else to vote. That's all. I think Bernard said it best. Vote, 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 and talk to others to vote. That's how I see it. That's a nice dialogue with Dozell. So glad tonight to have you all with us. We'll see you next week. Maybe next week we'll talk sports, or we'll talk entertainment. Maybe we'll do something fun next week. With all of this craziness going on, we would be disingenuous to what we do and to who you allow us to come into your living rooms or wherever we're able to come to you every week if we didn't deal with all of these outrageous things that are happening. While we were gone, I decided to take the gloves off. Bernard says I'm doing a decent job. I hope I am. I'm taking the glove off. We're going to fight all of this stuff. You only win when you fight the power. God bless. We'll see you next week. It's Dialogue with Dozell.